We're back again for another video lesson. Today's lesson is on converting fractions and decimals to percents. Now we've already talked about how to get a fraction from a decimal and how to get a decimal from a fraction, but now we're going to talk about how to get percent in there. First, a little bit of review. To go from a fraction to a decimal, what do we need to do? We've got to divide. So if we've got 3/5, we're going to take 3 and divide that by 5. So 3/5 equals 0.6. Don't forget, very important, move that decimal place straight up. Now to go from a decimal to a fraction, it's a little bit easier. We've got 0.85. We're going to look at how many places there are after the decimal point. We've got 1, 2. And we're going to put that over 100 because it's got 2 decimal places. So 85 over 100, I need to simplify. That simplifies to 17 over 20 when I divide by 5. So 0.85 equals 17 over 20. Hopefully you remember how to do that. What we need to know now is how to convert a decimal to a percent. So let's talk about that. There's 2 ways that you can do this. We're going to talk about both ways, and then you can pick which one you like better. Method 1 is to multiply by 100, then add the percent sign. So let's look at how we would do that. I've got 0.38. I'm going to take that 0.38 and I'm going to multiply by 100. When I have 0.38 times 100, that gives me 38, and then I add my percent sign. Another example, I've got 2.41. Now this one's got a whole number in it, but it doesn't matter. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to multiply by 100, and that's going to give me 241%. It's okay to have a percent over 100. Sometimes that's going to happen, and we'll talk more about that in the next week. Let's go ahead and look at method 2. Okay, method 2, what we're going to do is we're just going to move the decimal place. We don't have to multiply, we just move the decimal place 2 places to the right. So let's look at how we do that. I've got 0.445. I'm going to look at where my decimal place is, move it 2 spots to the right, rewrite my number with the decimal place, and then add a percent sign. Let's do that again. 1.2. I'm going to move my decimal 2 places to the right. Now this one's a little bit different because I don't have anything right here. So I've got to put in a 0 for a placeholder. Then I rewrite my number 120%. You try some. Go ahead and pause the video, change these decimals to percents, and come back, check your answers. Okay, I'm going to use the decimal moving method as I solve these. That's the one that I like the best. I think it's a little bit easier. So that's what I'm going to show you as I solve these problems. So for 0.49, I move it twice, rewrite it as 49%. 0.341, move it twice, rewrite it as 34.1%. And number 3, 1.81, move that decimal twice, rewrite the number as 181%. Let's talk about converting fractions to percents. Now this is a little trickier. It's going to involve more steps. There's again 2 methods. One of them always works, one of them only works sometimes. So we need to know both methods. Method 1, we're going to change the fraction to a decimal first, then change the decimal to a percent. This is always going to work. This is the one method that you can count on when you need to turn a fraction into a percent. So let's look at an example. I've got 2/5. I'm going to divide so that I end up with a decimal. Okay, so I divided 2 by 5. I got 0.4. Now I'm going to take that 0.4 in step 2, and I'm going to turn that 0.4 into a percent. So I can move the decimal place 2 places. Again, I need a placeholder, so I enter a 0 there. My answer is 40%. Let's look at another example using this method. I've got 4/9. Step 1, I set up my division problem. 4 divided by 9. Okay, that gives me 0.444. Now this would just keep repeating and repeating and repeating, but once I get 3 spots, I can stop. I can get a close enough answer. Step 2, we're going to take our 0.444. We're going to move that decimal 2 places to the right. Then I rewrite my number as a percent, 44.4%. This method again always works. Here's the one that's maybe a tad easier, but it doesn't always work, so we can't always rely on it. Method 2. We're going to multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number to get 100 as the denominator. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to take my 2/5 again, and I want to find something that I can multiply by to get 100 as my denominator. 5 times what is 100? 5 times 20 is 100. So I'm going to multiply the top number and the bottom number by 20, and I get 40 over 100. So you're converting a fraction. You're making an equivalent fraction with 100 as the denominator. Then I'm just going to take my top number, and that's now my percent, because remember, percent was out of 100. So I've got 40%. Let's try another one. This is where you have to watch out. This method doesn't always work. Let me show you what I mean. 4/9. 9 times 9 is 81. 9 times 10 is 90. 9 times 11 is 99. We cannot get 100. So on this one, you can't use this method. You would have to go back and you'd have to divide, get a decimal, and then change the decimal. So sometimes a little bit easier to get an equivalent fraction, but unfortunately it doesn't always work. Let's go ahead and try some of these on our own. Now I'll give you a hint. 2 of these you can get an equivalent fraction. You can multiply and get 100 on the bottom and it'll work. One of them, that won't work. So let's see what you can do. Go ahead and pause, work these out, and we'll be right back to check. Okay, number 1 3/4. You can multiply to get this one. 4 times 25 is 100. So if I multiply 3 times 25, I get 75. 75 is going to be my percent. Number 2, 9/10. Again, you can multiply and get 100 on the bottom. 10 times 10 is 100. So multiply the 9 by 10 as well, and I get 90 over 100, so 90 is my percent. 1/3 was the one that didn't work. So let's take a look at what we had to do for that. I've got to take my 1 and divide by 3. This is another one that keeps going, but once I get to 3 places, I can go ahead and stop. My answer will be close enough. I move my decimal and I rewrite as a percent. Great job today, guys. We'll practice this more in class.